Hello and welcome to another episode of the podcast of Bronze and Iron. As always, I am joined by my fantastic co-host, J.R. Rowley, founder of Geek Chat 1 community. But today, J.R., we have a special treat, and we're actually welcoming our first special guest on the podcast, Vanessa Cole, writer from Watchers on the Wall and member of the Night's Cast podcast features on Watchers on the Wall. Vanessa, welcome. How are you today?
Hi, guys. I am fantastic. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, thanks for coming. And I've been a long time supporter of your Twitter page. I would like to say that you fight the good fight. So we're gonna
I try.
You try, exactly.
For Twitter is dark and full of trolls.
Yeah, I'm grounded from Twitter. My other co-host Gemma from Secrets of the Citadel grounded me because I got into too many fights on Twitter. So I'm currently grounded from making too many arguments out there. But Vanessa, I am not as well versed as the Twitterverse in you, but I couldn't help but notice, of course, you being the champion for good and calling out questionable comments such as Daenerys, comparing Daenerys to Hitler, and views, especially when it comes to the strong women of Westeros, characters such as Daenerys Targaryen. Let's talk a little bit about that and why it's important we have people like yourself in the fandom.
Well, sure. And, like you said, I do try to fight the good fight, which it's a little strange because I've just noticed it more these past few months. And I don't know if it's a side effect of season 8 coming or what it is. But I never really felt the need to defend characters as much as I have lately. But yeah, so, I do try to fight the good fight, but I always try to be respectful. I understand that people like different characters for different reasons. And, if you don't like a character, that's fine. I have no issue with people bringing up, valid reasons for not liking this or that character. But what I've just noticed fairly recently is just the amount of hate and vitriol, and it's not just at Daenerys. I've seen it a lot directed toward Sansa. Catelyn is another one. So it's just frustrating. George has written this wonderful work that is full of complex, morally gray characters, as we all like to say.
Yeah.
But I do think some of them skew more to the good than others. And it's fine to debate the merits of each one. But when you see characters that I believe, in my own personal opinion, that George wants us to view as good but with flaws, just being vilified, it just kind of infuriates me, especially when they're some of my favorite characters. So I always try to at least bring up, facts and evidence from the books and even from the show when it's warranted to support the evidence that maybe these characters aren't as villainous as people seem to think they are.
Yeah, me and JR have we live by the moniker here on the channel, Hype and Love. We try to celebrate as much as we can, 90% positive. We try and be positive here on the channel and in Geek Chat 1 community. Jay, we're going to get your hot take in a second. Vanessa, I have a question for you. Why do you think it is that Daenerys Targaryen is so misunderstood by so many people?
Well, I think there are a few reasons. I think probably the show is the biggest one for why people may not like her. And I don't necessarily think that they are giving her character the best treatment from book to show. And I'm not usually too terribly critical of the show. I try to focus on the good points, and yes, there are issues at times, but I don't like to nitpick. And with Daenerys, I don't even necessarily think it's that they're doing a bad job. It's more of the fact that with Daenerys, and even with Sansa too, you're so much in their head in the novels because the persona that they have to project to the people around them is very different from their internal feelings and emotions and the way they view themselves. And so you don't get those nuances really when you're watching the show. And so all you see is like stoic Sansa, trying to be this political badass, and then Daenerys, projecting this aura of power and, swooping in on her dragon and trying to instill fear. And, I don't think that always comes across as well as it does on the page. And then, of course, there are a lot of people that just don't like strong women. So as horrible as that is to say.
The straight misogyny comments are just awful for any of these characters. And my biggest fear with a lot of this is that it's almost become posh to villainize characters like this if they're female or anything. I mean, and I'm worried that part of this is still leftover blowback from The Last Jedi, because that's the first time we really saw this attack. Well, not the first time, but as prevalent and as at your fingertips of just blasting female characters and strong female characters at that.
Well, we saw JR just the other day. Captain Marvel's not even out yet, and there's already people posting reviews up blasting Brie Larson, and there's critics that are reviewing the movie that are saying that she's put on the strongest performance perhaps since Tony Stark, since Robert Downey Jr. So I agree with what you're saying. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
But at the end of the day, I mean, these are fictional characters that we're talking about, and I completely agree with Vanessa, and we've banged on this a couple of times, that Sansa is inherently an internal character, and it's incredibly hard to translate a first-person narrative, POV, that's an internal monologue in her head almost the entire time that she's writing, because she, one, has to stay quiet due to her circumstance. She can't open her mouth in King's Landing without fear of losing her head, or other situations that she gets placed into. So I think, unfortunately for the show, they do a bit of a disservice, especially to a character like Sansa, who's inherently internal, and to a certain degree Daenerys as well.
Right. I mean, I think the only way you can show that kind of internal struggle is either have them alone talking to themselves, which
seems crazy.
That's kind of silly. Yeah, it's pretty silly. Or have them, talking to or confiding in someone that they explicitly trust. And in both their cases, there aren't that many people that they can do that with. You do get a few moments of that on occasion, but it's also time consuming. Like, do we really need to have this 10-minute conversation with this one character just to get a sense of what this person is feeling every episode?
Right. And they tried, and they did fairly well when she had Shay as a confidant.
Yeah.
That exchange was pretty genuine, and it didn't come across clunky or disingenuous by any stretch. And then the subtlety with Roz as well, with Baelish, and saying, watch out for that one, kind of keeping along those lines.
Right. It's just hard when you have so many different storylines and so many different characters you have to cover, each episode, to really take the time to focus on things like that. So, I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
I just think it's kind of a shame.
Well, I mean, we gotta look at the characters as a whole too. I think that especially with Sansa's character, people like to look at, obviously, that she wanted to go to King's Landing, and she had this idea of what it actually might be like in her head. And Daenerys, of course, knowing that she's royalty and that King's Landing belonged to House Targaryen and her father, although her father was not in a great state to continue ruling the kingdom. People like to focus on these things, but this leads into my next question, Vanessa. I think it's pretty crazy how so many people seek to invalidate the physical and psychological abuse characters like Daenerys and Sansa face. These are two strong women who have lived in fear and had to make extremely difficult choices. And one thing that I found extremely interesting is what Emilia Clarke said about the final season and her character, and that it will leave a lasting impression on who Daenerys really is as a character. And this kind of goes back to me scouring through your Twitter and Daenerys really wanting to be loved and love for real. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that was an interesting interview, and I've seen it taken by many people to suggest that she's going to go mad or she's going to become the final villain, because I think it was a Vanity Fair interview with Joanna Robinson, who I absolutely love. She's fantastic. Please go check out her work on Game of Thrones, Westworld. She's amazing. We had her as a guest on the night's cast, and it was great. But she did an interview, and I believe Emilia's exact quote was something like, her final scene really effed her up. It said she said something like knowing that was going to leave a lasting flavor in people's mouth of what Daenerys is. Yeah. And so people kind of took that to mean, oh, does that mean she's, Daenerys is going to become bad and Amelia is sad that people will remember her as this crazy villain or something? But if you read it in the context, to me, it reads more like it was, the pressure of finishing up this character that she's lived in for the past 10 years almost, and making sure that she gets her final scenes right and does justice to her character. And that's really how I took it more than anything else. And I could be wrong, maybe something crazy will happen, but I just felt like it was more of like, I really need to nail this because this is it. And as far as like the abuse and people invalidating that, what I have seen more, yes, people try to reason away some of the things that they've had to go through and say, well, it was okay because this, or like it led to this. And so
Daenerys was
fine.
13 years old with Cal.
Right.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, but it's in the show. She's older. It's fine, whatever. And Drogo, she and Drogo grew to love each other, and so it's no big deal. And I've seen that a lot. And what I've seen more of is, oh well, yeah, Daenerys had to deal with this, but Sansa had to deal with this. This is even worse, or vice versa. So it's I've seen people refer to it as the suffering Olympics, like it's a competition to see who suffered the most, which is really stupid.
Yeah, it is.
And a lot of it springs from, and nothing against shippers. You ship who you want to ship. I don't care. That's fine with me. But when you get into these like Twitter wars of who has the better ship and whose is more valid and whose is going to actually happen, and where you're to the point where people are trashing each other, trashing the characters, trashing the actors that portray the characters. I mean, it's gotten crazy. So I think, that's where a lot of that is coming from. And my own personal opinion, everyone's suffering is valid. Everyone has a reason for how they deal with whatever circumstances they're in and how they react to the things that they've had to live through. And trying to understand each person's own specific journey, I think, is valid in and of itself. And you don't have to sit there and compare them.
Yeah, I agree. That's why we have so many different POVs, and that's why the Song of Ice and Fire is so great. It's because they're each experiencing inform their own hero's journey, and we are seeing the evolution of each of these characters as they go through these different periods of incredibly dangerous times within Westeros. JR, what are your thoughts on this?
I just fail to understand, and this probably is more of a commentary on our current situation in the world, and the fact that people have lost the ability to debate or argue in the true sense of the word. You present your facts as you know them, I'll present my facts as I know them, and we'll discuss it in the middle. But all of a sudden, it's just turned into this incredibly vile thing where people go after individuals who are writing it. It just makes no sense to me. I absolutely loathe it. Because I love debate.
Amelia Clark as an actress too, JR. We've spoke about this before as well, like them going after her credentials as an actress because of certain. There are certain things that I didn't believe that Amelia pulled off as Daenerys, but there's also moments where I'm like, yeah, she really nailed that. So people are incredibly focused on, I think, specific things that happen because, we do have the books and the show. So there's always going to be this like, well, it could have been this way. So people will, as Vanessa said,
and that's almost projecting at that point when you say things like that. Those kind of statements, that's projection. That's not, it doesn't mean it's factually true. You're just projecting what your own desire is for it. It's ridiculous.
So, but Vanessa, to kind of follow up, do you believe that we are, and in the books, and I know, and we're not going to get the books for a little bit, but for the show, do you think we're going to see the true representation of Daenerys Targaryen in season 8? Like,
it's really tough to say. I know that Benioff and Weiss met with George R.R. Martin, and I want to say this was after season 3. I could be wrong. Fact check me if you want. Don't hold me to that. I don't recall exactly when this conversation took place. But I know they met in New Mexico. Like I said, I think it was after season 3 to discuss the general trajectory of the storyline and where things were headed because, of the risk of, which is what happened, overtaking the books.
Yeah.
So he did give them kind of his grand plan for where the overall story was heading, and also, kind of the big plot points for his main characters. Because, he's a gardener. Obviously, he kind of makes things up as he goes, but he does have, a general sense of where, like the main story is going, and like I said, the big characters. So I think that they will try to honor where he's going with the story. I don't think there's going to be some huge change where, George is going to have, the White Walkers defeated, but Dan and Dave are going to have them just taking over and killing everybody. I don't think that's going to happen.
Or like Daenerys dying and surviving in the show or something
right.
like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think,
yeah.
So my personal feeling, for the main characters at least, I don't think you're going to see them die in one medium and live in the other. There may be a few exceptions, but I tend to believe that whoever survives in the show is likely to survive in the books. George may change his mind, who knows? But from what I've seen in interviews he's done is that he's already laid the groundwork for a lot of these major plot points and pretty much the end game, and he doesn't plan on kind of retconning it and changing it because there is already foreshadowing for where he's headed, and he doesn't want it to not make sense by changing it.
The tracks have already been laid. He can't back those tracks up. I mean, it would
like R plus L equals J. People love to pick the Shara Dane bullshit. I'm not going to mention this for more than 15 seconds, but listen. R plus
that could be a whole podcast.
If it's in the goddamn show, people, it's happening in the books. Get over it. We're moving on. We're going to move on to our next question.
Kyle just got triggered on a Shara Dane, and he did it to himself.
I know. JR, you got the next question here.
Vanessa, we had some really interesting photos that were released, and Watchers on the Wall put out the article as soon as they came out. It gave us a look at season 8 for Game of Thrones. Brienne, Sansa, Arya. Which of these character arcs are you most excited to see play out in the final season?
I'm really interested to see where all of them are headed, to be honest. Of course, I love Daenerys and
Vanessa.
Yeah. Well, it's true. It's true though. No, but I mean, I love Jon and I love Daenerys. No, I'm not necessarily a Daenerys shipper. I get that accusation all the time. Oh, you just ship Daenerys, whatever. No, I mean, I love both characters. Whether or not they end up together, I really don't care. But if it's a mutually respective, loving relationship, whatever, go for it.
God forbid we have a healthy relationship.
I know, we get so little of it on the show. Like,
some people get happiness. Oh my God, we don't want that.
Right. So, but I am interested to see where that goes and how, Jon's family reacts to him bending the knee and like, here's my new Targaryen girlfriend, guys. I think that's going to be a really interesting reunion.
And then Bran popping in with, I got something to tell you.
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to seeing how that affects their dynamic. Side note, I do get a little frustrated with people saying, oh, aunt and nephew, that's so disgusting. Like, they're going to be just totally grossed out by that, blah, 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 whatever. One, I don't know that Daenerys would be, because she's used to her like siblings and her family marrying each other. So I don't see that being an issue for her necessarily. Two, so there's cousin marriage in Westeros. There have been a few instances of like uncle, niece, even in the Stark family tree, it's happened. So it's not
Joanna
common.
Lannister and Tywin. I mean, they were cousins.
Yeah. So it's not super common, like at least the aunt, nephew, uncle, niece arrangement. That doesn't happen a ton, but it's not so unusual that people would just be like, oh my God, this is totally disgusting. So at least in the books, I don't think it would be as big a deal. It might be in the show just because drama, but remains.
This is one that I end up going off on a lot of the times too, because inherently people have this want to put modern societal rules on everything, and I'm like, look, you have to take it as this period is presented to us. This is a period piece, and it's supposed to mirror the Dark Ages, and we kind of have to live by those rules. You can't
not real monogamous, relationships. That is obviously the norm in our current time.
Right. with our rates of divorce that are through the roof, yeah, I mean, stop looking at it through a modern lens. You have to kind of put a historical lens on this. And let's not forget that this is fantasy to begin with. This is high fantasy.
Yeah.
You got to suspend a little bit of belief in the beginning of it.
Yeah, and I mean, noble families in our own history, did the same thing, intermarriage. And George has even said genetics don't work the same way in his world. So I think a lot of those criticisms are not as valid as they would be, obviously, in our own modern context. And the fact that they don't know they're related, they were complete strangers to each other, they didn't grow up together, I find it less problematic than obviously like Jaime and Cersei. Like that's much more problematic to me.
Yeah, that's way more overt too. Like, I mean, it's put right in front of your face from, chapter 1. I mean, it's right in your face.
And the dynamic between the two as well. Obviously, there's a manipulation there, and it is not a 50-50 relationship. So, I mean, it's pretty straight up. Yeah.
Yeah, but as far as another storyline I'm really invested in is I want to see Jaime and Brienne reunite. I'm just so looking forward to that moment. Even if it's only for a couple of episodes before one of them dies. Well, I hope not, but I'm dying to see that, especially now that he's cut ties with Cersei. It's going to be really nice to see them back together.
And those photos too seem to suggest that they all perhaps may be in the same scene.
Yeah, it sure looks like it.
Yeah. So that's
and the
what
smile,
I was.
The little smirky smile on Jaime's face.
Yeah, I love Jaime's side smile.
So great. Please tell me he's looking at Brienne. I've got to see that.
We discussed that in our podcast last week. We discussed the photos and the possibility of that, being Daenerys and Jaime having some sort of awkward exchange where they're, obviously they have to be courteous if they're in the presence of other people and if they're discussing matters and how to resolve matters and whatnot. But I genuinely agree with you and think that could be Jaime and Brienne in that scenario.
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of people are like, oh, Daenerys is going to hate Jaime because he killed her dad. But I'm like, no, she already has admitted her dad was kind of crazy and evil, and I don't think that she would be that upset. But the fact that he charged at her and tried to kill her on the field of fire, loot train battle, stupid name, whatever it was. I think she'll be more upset about that than anything else.
It's really interesting that they chose to have that conversation with Daenerys. Wasn't it with Tyrion about the Mad King, and then it was the conversation about Rhaegar with Sir Barristan. So I think they're obviously trying to draw the contrast between Rhaegar and the Mad King, which is really interesting because obviously Rhaegar is Jon's father.
Yes, he is.
Still going on.
They're trying to come up with evidence to the contrary, people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and mine is I'm most interested, as much as I love Arya, I think hers is pretty well played out. But the one I'm most interested in, because I think it has the biggest question mark, is Sansa. Yeah. And what is actually going to happen to her. And everybody knows that listens to us regularly that I'm a huge Sansa fan, and not for the gross part of it, but the protective brotherly part of it. Yeah. And in Sansa and in Arya, he actually sees his sister that he couldn't protect. So that's part of the reason that I say Sansa so hard, but that's the one I'm really invested in.
Happy birthday to Sophie Turner today, by the way. Really, she's awesome, of course. And she actually had I can't remember which outlet it was, but she said that she's going to have some. She's going to be wearing armor in season 8. So some hard leather this black outfit, which I totally dig because the Lady Stoneheart vibes, which we will not get into because I failed on that prediction long ago for the show. But yeah, no, I'm kind of with you there. But I'm a huge Jaime Lannister fan, and I can't wait to see what goes down with him in the North. I'm so excited to see those different interactions there. Before we get into our next question here, we're going to do a little bit of an announcement break like we did with the last podcast. If you are enjoying this video, please make sure you give it a like and subscribe to the channel here at Zoro Hype, and also make sure you go check out Geek Chat 1 on Facebook and YouTube, which you can find the links to in the description of this video. Also, if you're looking for more great content, you can follow Vanessa on Twitter and check out her podcast, The Nice Cats, in which she collaborates with other awesome community members and the extended A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones family and Watchers on the Wall, iTunes and iTunes and Watchers on the Wall. You said, right, Vanessa?
Yes, SoundCloud, but we always post it to Watchers, so you'll always know when a new episode comes up.
Awesome. So, JR, we have our next question. Let's move along.
Okay, so Cersei, Vanessa. It looks like she's now along with very few allies left. Jaime's left her side. How far do you think she's willing to go to hold her power in King's Landing? And do you think there's a chance that she will have a child and that it could be her saving grace?
So I'm of the opinion that this child won't happen. I think she'll lose it. And I know it's the show, it's not the books, but in the books, I mean, you get a pretty fair prediction that she's only going to have the 3, and they're all going to die. So I think it would be kind of strange for her to actually have another one. I think the reason that they even went that route in the show was to give Tyrion pause about totally destroying her, because you can definitely see his love for her other children, not Joffrey, of course, but Myrcella and Tommen. Like he genuinely cared about those kids. He does genuinely love his family and want their respect. I mean, I think that's what he's kind of been driving for his whole life. Not just like power in of itself, but respect within his own family. And so I think that Cersei being pregnant definitely had an effect on him when he met with her at the end of season 7, and who knows what he will end up doing with that information in season 8, but I think that's why they made her pregnant, not necessarily because she's actually going to have a child. As far as predictions, I would not have thought her to have been around this long. But of course, Lena Headey is an amazing actress, and so I totally understand why they wanted to use her as long as they could.
She's the headliner. I mean, kind of got to run with it.
She's fantastic, and with getting rid of the Fagon, as a lot of people like to call him, getting rid of that plot, you had to keep some kind of villain to have our heroes, quote unquote, fight against, and they really didn't do too terribly much with Euron. So she's kind of the big bad. But yeah, I mean, I definitely see her losing eventually. I think it's been foreshadowed for sure in the books, and even on the show, I don't think that they've kind of laid it out where she's going to end up being the winner of all of this. So yeah,
my worry with it is that they're going to use that as that she could have a child as an excuse to make Gendry actually her and Robert Baratheon's child. And that's my fear. And I think that might be part of what they're setting up.
I don't know. I would maybe, but I mean, I think if they did that, the only reason would to be for there to be a Baratheon heir, since all of the rest of them are wiped out. I mean, the Stormlands are without a leader, basically, with no Baratheon there. And so they're going to need somebody, but that can be accomplished just as easily with him being legitimized by Daenerys or by Jon. And I think that, that's likely to happen because he's, on their side now. So, so I think that would be rather silly to kind of retcon that in now.
I know.
It doesn't really make sense to me.
I think the reason why they're doing it is, the death and life parallels, the ice and fire parallels that we see. Daenerys and Jon, I am of the belief that they are 100% going to have a child. Whether that means Daenerys and Jon live in the end, that's a big question mark. We know that George R. R. Martin's original outline had Daenerys, Jon Snow, Tyrion, Arya, and Bran surviving, with Sansa kind of being like the sixth maybe. So it could completely change, and we could see a scenario where Tyrion and Sansa are kind of like the pseudo parents to Jon and Dany's child if Jon and Dany die. But I really think that Jon and Daenerys are having a kid, and that Cersei is going to lose that child in the miscarriage, and because we constantly have these opposing forces of ice and fire within Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think they're going to have a child. And that's really kind of been my sticking point with deciding like who lives, who dies. I don't like making predictions because invariably, something's going to be wrong.
Yeah.
But I think that at least one of them makes it. I just have a hard time thinking that they will both die. And I know the popular opinion is that Dany's going to die. But then again, I'm like, okay, so if she's going to have a child, and there's only 6 episodes left. At what point does she have this kid, and at what point does she die? Does she die on childbirth? Because that's a horrible way to end her character arc. I think that's ridiculous. Yeah, it's really kind of tough to figure out the timing of all of this.
I think we're gonna get the mirror of the Tower of Joy scene where Dany says, "Promise me" to Jon and all of that, and then Jon is experiencing exactly what Ned experienced, and his. I know it's, but like that, I can't get it out of my mind, and I know a lot of people would be upset with that, but there's something in my gut that tells me that that's going to happen.
And I'd be included in that too, because I think it'd be a horrible way for Dany to go.
Yeah, I mean, it would be better for her to go out like Rhaenys did. I mean, getting crushed by a dragon.
Yeah, I'd much rather see her like going out in a blaze of glory, fighting the good fight against the White Walkers. You know, I just there's been so many of the female characters in the story died even before it started because they died in childbirth. Like all the main characters' parents pretty much died in childbirth. You know, Jon's mother died, and Tyrion's mother died, and Daenerys' mother died. And like, come on, you know, I know it happened, but do they all have to die in childbirth?
Yeah, the sticking point to the 3 heads of the dragon Tyrion is a Targaryen theory that is out there.
Yeah. I don't think that's going to go anywhere in the show. In the books, you know, maybe it will, but I don't see them addressing that in the show at all.
So yeah, I don't think they'll touch on it.
Yeah, me neither. It might be hinted at, but I mean, I think they're gonna leave Tyrion as Tywin's as the only Lannister left, and he's Tywin's son. That's kind of the ironic thing I think that they're going to be going with. Vanessa, we know that you have other things to attend to in the realm. You are a busy bee, but we got a final question here. That's kind of a loaded question with some other characters that we wanted to talk about. You know, we're mostly talking about the women of Westeros today, but let's talk a little bit about Yara, Asha. We call her Yarsha just because we get mixed up all the time. I am constantly going back and forth between Ara and Yasha. And let's talk a little bit about some of those characters in the background, like Missandei and some of the other ladies of Westeros that don't have as prominent a role as, you know, a Daenerys Targaryen or a Cersei.
Sure. So, yeah, as far as Yara goes, it's really an interesting subject. You know, she's Euron's captive. We know Theon's going after her. That was one of my theories, I think, last season, was because, you know, the Forsaken chapter had come out, and, you know, we saw, spoilers, I don't know if everyone knows about that chapter.
No,
I've seen a summary. But, you know, we see that Euron takes his brother Aaron and lashes him to the prow of a ship, and he's got his pregnant mistress, or whatever you want to call her, lashed to the prow of the ship, and her tongue has been cut out. Yeah, and so, you know, that chapter had come out, and I'm like, I wouldn't put it past them on the show to, you know, take some of that and put it into Yara's storyline, and because now she's his captive, like, oh my god, are we gonna see her lashed to the prow of a ship with her tongue cut out? That would be awful and horrible, but I could, you know, see them going that way, and maybe they still will. I don't know, but the only problem I have with that is I have a hard time seeing them have any of their bigger actors on the show with no lines whatsoever. I know they did that to poor Rick, and that was terrible. But I think, honestly, it was because he had grown up so much and his voice had completely changed. And it would be like, oh, he's supposed to be this little kid, and now he sounds like a 30-year-old man. It's just, you know, it's weird.
Isaac Hempstead, right, is like 7 feet tall now.
Right, exactly. It's hilarious. But yeah, I could see that maybe in the books. I don't think they're going to go that way in the show. I mean, honestly, in the books, if anyone's going to get their tongue cut out, it's probably Tyrion. Because there is a whole theory about that. If you don't know about it, it's the quiet lion theory. Google it. It's really fascinating and sad, but it's great. But of course, they're not going to, you know, take away lines from Peter Dinklage. I mean, come on,
ever.
That's never going to happen.
No,
exactly. So yeah, I'm really. That's the other storyline I'm really interested to see is what happens with Theona and Yara and Euron. Yeah, I really, you know, he's such a wild card in this story, especially in the books, but even in the show, you know,
all the Greyjoys are.
Yeah.
I have no idea what he's going to end up doing there. I don't even know if he's going to stay loyal to Cersei, to be honest. So he's in charge of the Golden Company. If he decides his prospects are better off somewhere else, who knows if he's even going to stay with her. So, yeah,
See,
I don't know.
And I think Golden 66 is going to happen. That the Golden Company in the midst of battle is going to flip on Cersei before going against Dany as some kind of rider in their contract originally when they were formed that ye will not fight against a Targaryen or a Blackfire, period, inside the Golden Company. That's my own little theory on it, but I think they'll flip
Daenerys
in
has
battle.
dragons. Come on, like if they see a dragon, I'm not so sure that they wouldn't be like, yeah, I don't think we want to get roasted alive.
Right.
You know?
It's really tough to see how anyone would stick with Cersei. Jamie might even take some of the Lannister troops with him. They're probably primarily loyal to him and not her. So who knows if some of them are going to follow him up north. She doesn't have a lot of support. He even mentioned that in season 7. Like she only has support of like less than half the kingdoms.
And it's constantly waning.
Yeah. And she got all of the riches from Highgarden, but she gave that to the Iron Bank. So it's, how much money does she really have to bribe people at this point? And yeah, Daenerys has 3 dragons. Like, come on, if you're gonna support a queen, I'm gonna
go with
support
the dragons.
Or firepower. Come on, yeah. So
firepower, pun totally intended.
Yeah, I would not be surprised to see them flipping allegiance. And maybe you're on. Like I said, I have no idea where they're going with this character. But I'm hopeful that Theon will at least, rescue Asha, or Yara, whatever. Even if he dies. Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible. He may die in the attempt. I don't know. I don't think they both survive. I think it's probably one or the other. I don't think they'll both die, though. I think one of them will live.
Yeah.
To carry on the Greyjoys in the Iron Islands, and hope not Euron. Like I see him dying for sure.
Him and Victarion are totally toast in the books.
Yeah.
I believe.
Oh yeah.
Especially Victarion.
He's
dumber than a rock.
He's going to be literally toast, probably fairly early on in the winter. So, yeah.
Yeah, he may take over Asha's role. One character that I wanted to bring up that, we talked a little bit about our pledge of the Bronze and Iron podcast being from House Reed is the curious case of Mira Reed in season 8 and Ellie Kendrick. This is a hot topic that's been discussed many, many times. I will be really pissed off if we don't see House Reed because I know that they're going to be a huge proponent in the books. We actually talked about last night about the Grand Northern Conspiracy and about how Howland Reed has the oral information from the Tower of Joy, and we hope that he will, link up with, Albert Glover and other characters to kind of figure out what's going on there. But what do you think about Mira Reed? We haven't really got. I mean, there's a rumor that she actually isn't going to be appearing in season 8 at all, Vanessa.
And I wouldn't be surprised if she doesn't show up. I mean, she really didn't have the greatest departure from Bran. It was pretty sad to watch that scene, actually. So, she was going home to help defend the neck from the White Walkers. Just considering the logistics of even trying to get to Greywater Watch, I think they're probably pretty protected. I mean, most people can't even find the castle, and the neck is just the terrain is just nearly impossible to navigate. So I think they're probably pretty safe there, and I don't, because of, Howland Reed might have a hand in revealing Jon's parentage in the book, but that's definitely going to be Bran in the show. And so there's really no need to bring him into the story now because we've only seen him in one flashback. And I think it would be superfluous on the show to have yet another character join in season 8. If we see Mira again at all, it might be just in the kind of aftermath of everything that's happened, because I'm feeling like we'll see the battle with the White Walkers, like their eventual defeat, we're assuming, and then I don't know if Cersei will happen before or after that, but she'll get defeated, and then somebody will be taking over, whether it's to continue ruling Westeros, or they're going to divide the kingdoms up, or however it's going to happen. But I could see maybe having some of these main characters come back in for the exposition of like what happens after. We might see her something like that, but I don't think she's going to be really involved in the action, unfortunately, because I do love her character.
JR, your thoughts on Mirror Read? I mean,
Yeah, my thoughts on Mirror are pretty much my thoughts on House Reed as a whole. I really, really hope we get them. I'm not certain that it's going to happen.
Yeah,
it's unfortunate. I think her character was great. Ellie did a great job with Mira, especially north of the wall, and
especially
explaining
with the
why she protects people the way she does. I absolutely love her character, and she did a great job with it. So that departure, like Vanessa said, it was really sad and very. It was just awkward.
It seemed final. It did seem like it had a finality to it.
It did.
And Bran, he kind of. I mean, Jamie's going to be there. There's going to be some weird conversation there. Bran's there. He's going to have other people that know the importance that he holds to the War for the Dawn, the kind of final battle. So I don't know. I mean, we don't necessarily need Howland Reed to confirm anything with the information that Bran.
Yeah, we have Matrix Bran that can go and find everything that he needs to find as long as he knows a place to go.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's going to be sad to get no reads whatsoever because they're a linchpin in literally everything in the books. So,
and that's something that we can look forward to in the books, like that we have a difference on. So it's like,
which is totally fine. I love the show and I love the books. I consider them separate but equal. It's just kind of the way it is. And George R. R. Martin said it. So there, don't be a hardcore bookie and boo on the show because they're doing what they have to. The one character that I'm curious about, Vanessa, and we've kind of left her out of this. What are your thoughts on Melisandre's return to Westeros, and what do you think is going to happen with her?
Or maybe we see her in Essos.
Yeah, maybe. I'm trying to recall if we had any news about filming.
It's been pretty tight-lipped.
Yeah, but I mean, all of the news that we've had about filming has been in typically Westerosi locations, like even in Spain, like the place that they used for the dragon pit. They filmed there.
They didn't have as much in Croatia, even.
Yeah, so they're like it's been like King's Landing. They went to Iceland, which is typically like beyond the wall. There, Northern Ireland, of course. But yeah, I mean, I haven't heard anything that would sound like someone would be in Essos or we would see it at all. So I don't think they're going to do that. I think she'll come back. My kind of crazy tinfoil theory about Melisandre is that she's going to get some more red priests and priestesses and bring them back to Westeros. And because the White Walkers can raise the dead into their army, maybe we're going to have some red priests come back and revive the fallen
zombie battle.
Yeah, like the fallen good guys to fight. Like we are going to have the Fire Whites fighting the Ice Whites, maybe. I mean,
the Fire White term just pisses me off.
Because like, how else do you fight an army that can keep resurrecting itself unless you can do the same thing? So who knows? But yeah, that's my crazy tinfoil that we'll be having people resurrect.
So you don't think she's coming back with the fiery hand?
I mean, maybe that too. But yeah, she's going there for a reason, and she told Varys that they're both going to die in Westeros. So I definitely see her coming back and dying in some way, shape, or form. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Yes, and everybody knows that I believe that it's going to be Davos running her through with Heartsbane and pulling back a fiery sword, but that's just me.
Oh yeah, the multiple Azor Ahai theory that I've been pushing for quite some time.
Oh god, I don't know if you guys have read it. Have you read it? Huh?
Reddit on Reddit?
Have you seen Reddit on Reddit? The one it was like everyone's Azor Ahai, and it's the most hilarious post I've ever seen. I think it's on it's on the A Song of Ice and Fire subreddit. Oh
yeah, I've definitely seen iterations of it.
Yeah. If you haven't read it, go there and find it. It's I can't remember the title of it, but it was like everyone's Azor Ahai, and it's hilarious.
I think that it's interesting because the Azor Ahai prophecy is transformative in nature, and I think that our characters are going to have to go through like their final transformations to deal with whatever they have to deal with. Like Sandor Clegane has to deal with his brother and the hate for his brother, and Daenerys has to kind of decide whether. I mean, we saw her obviously make the decision with Jon to help fight for the side of the living. All these people have to kind of make. They're at this crux, this this kind of last part, the third act of their stories, where they have to make this decision. So I get that point of it, but I think there will be, and we've talked about this before, will be one person that's kind of heralded as the Azor Ahai. I think that's Jon. But Jaime could have an Azor Ahai like moment where he like blows up wildfire or something like that in King's Landing, or Daenerys. Like those type, like three characters kind of really stand out to me. Maybe Sandor being another one. But yeah, sorry not to crap on your Davos theory. You know how much I love Davos.
I admit it's fully tinfoil, but I just love it.
Yeah.
Well, I will say we saw Melisandre tell Daenerys and Jon that they both had an important role to play in the War for the Dawn, and she specifically mentioned she didn't call it Azor Ahai, they call it the prince that was promised in the show. Yeah. She specifically mentioned it, and Missandei made a point to say that the terms that she was using in Valyrian were gender neutral, and the prince could actually be a princess. Yeah. And so why would they call that out unless Daenerys was? I think it's kind of like a yin yang thing where they're both Azor Ahai and they're both hated.
Well, it's really interesting because I did a God's Eye video, and I'm not the only person to talk about this, but as we see throughout the story, there's so many parallel moments that we see Jon and Daenerys share cinematically. If you're looking at the scenes, and in the books as well, just like these repetitions, they're essentially experiencing the same things. Like, for example, the Battle of the Bastards, where Jon is rising to gather his breath when he's almost suffocating. Then obviously
compared to Misa,
the Misa scene. So they're the ice and fire parallel, obviously, with Jon being, the stark ice side of it, and Daenerys being heralded as, the fire side of it.
Yeah. And I mean, even director Alan Taylor said that George R. R. Martin told him that Jon and Daenerys were sort of the point of the whole story. And this was years ago. So, I mean, you got to figure that they're the two key players in the end game.
Which is interesting, because if we looked at the first season of Game of Thrones, and I watched the whole season in one go, I thought it was Ned Stark. So I fell in love with Ned Stark and lost him in the same evening. So this has been really fun, Vanessa. Before we go, I do want to get like one kind of fun prediction that you have for Game of Thrones Season 8.
Okay. So I'm going to kind of go out on a limb and say that Daenerys lives. Woo! And I'm there, and she and Jon are going to rule together, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a Disney fairy tale ending. And I'm probably wrong, but just because everyone else seems so adamant that that's never going to happen, I have to kind of root for it. So there you go.
Awesome. JR?
Love it. My out there, I'm still going to go with Davos being the sword that falls across the table and being a part of the Azor Ahai.
The shadowy sword that falls.
The shadowy sword across the map table. Yep.
Well, you all know that I've been an advocate for Daenerys dying in almost every single one of my Jon and Daenerys videos. So I'm going to go with the prediction that Sandor Clegane actually survives the whole series, and that he's going to melt the mountain's face and kill him with fire. And somehow use fire in some sort of way, whether it may be protecting the Stark girls or not. So, Vanessa, thank you so much for joining us today. We had a blast chatting with you. Can you kind of tell us what's happening next with you and where we can find you on social media?
Sure. Well, you can definitely find me over at Watchers on the Wall. I haven't been as active with the writing as of late, just busy with other things, but definitely we'll be picking that back up as season 8 gets started. You can obviously find us over at the Night's Cast. It's at Night's Cast on Twitter. We are continuing our season 7 rewatch. I think we only have 3 more episodes to go, and then we'll start doing weekly podcasts leading up to season 8, when we're going to start doing a live stream the Sunday before the show. So follow us over there. Follow me on Twitter at VKColeArtist. I am continuing my season 7 art projects. Hopefully I'll have some more that I can share before season 8. And yeah, check me out.
Awesome. And we will make sure, if you go in the description of this video, you will, of course, be able to find all the links to Vanessa's Twitter and the Night's Cast and her awesome art. So go check her out and, yeah, show her some support. JR, what's next for you, my friend?
Let's let's see. Well, we got all sorts of stuff to get ready for this weekend, don't we, Kyle?
Yep.
Tomorrow night we'll be on Channel Azora Hype, and we're going to be discussing theories for season 8 that came from your patrons. And then Saturday on Geek Chat 1, we'll be continuing Grand Northern Conspiracy Part 2, collaboration with Secrets of the Citadel and Azora Hype. So be looking forward to that, and hopefully we'll see y'all there.
Yes. And of course, JR, the links to your social media and all that will be in the description of this video. Geek Chat 1 on Facebook. You hit 700 subscribers last night. Congratulations.
Yep, thanks.
And yeah, we have some more exciting guests coming on our podcast. We have Phil the Issues guy. He said he's going to come on. We got Lucifer Means Lightbringer coming on next week, and some other surprise guests that you will be seeing on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you all in the next podcast. Thank you so much.